Greetings, g'day, how are you? Today is November the 18th, 2024, and I'm with my friend Cifehtr, and we're going to be talking about things. And one of the conversations we had previously, Cifehtr, was about spiritual stress, and I've never thought about it like that before. Spiritual stress, I know stress, mental, emotional, physical stress, and I think many of us, you guys listening as well, have gone through that, particularly over the past few years. And I've certainly felt stress in different areas, in different ways that I've not experienced before. So spiritual stress, though, that's a bit of a new concept. Well, it's not really, but I'm curious as to what you mean by that. And let's have a conversation about it. We're just hanging out around the kitchen dining table at the moment with a cup of coffee. So
some of us have a cup of coffee. Others have been relegated to water.
Looks like a gin and tonic to me. Could be a bit early. But yeah, so please elaborate. Spiritual stress for our audience out there. And thank you for watching, those of you that are watching here at this time. And feel free to share this video and subscribe. And we're going to be doing more of this moving forward.
So spiritual stress is basically... in many ways, you could align it to regular stress, stress of the mind, stress of the emotions, stress of the body. But it is a spiritual concept which sometimes is actually out of your control and comes upon many of those watching, and I have noticed in yourself at times as well as Louise, in an unconscious manner. And what happens is that the stress that you connect into is something that is what I would call a blanket, a psychic blanket, a connection, a vibration that is planetary wide. Yes, if we can use this terminology. And many do not consider that the stress that they're feeling is actually spiritual. Now, what exactly is this terminology, and why do I use the terminology spiritual stress? Well, if we look at the body and we see what happens to the body when the body is under stress, when it is first recognized, people will go for a walk, they'll try to do things to de-stress themselves, go to gym, read a book, watch a movie, lie on the grass, do something that will help diffuse the body. Mm-hmm. But however, if that physical stress is then compounded by mental stress, what begins to happen is that the mind keeps working over and over, contemplating, thinking, pondering, running scenarios through the head and through the concepts of the different outcomes, etc., building the stress. That then translates into the body. Then that translates into the emotions, and that translates into sometimes a breakdown within the individual of whether it's a mental breakdown, an emotional breakdown, a physical breakdown. Something happens and it gives way. Now, spiritual stress is in many ways very, very similar to this. However, what begins to happen is there becomes, instead of an outward exterior symptom like a breakdown, lethargy comes in, a tiredness comes in. Spiritual stress is often identified within people of false expectations.
Identified with people who have false expectations.
They have all of a sudden these expectations that are in their lives, that they must achieve this, they must be like this, they must, all of a sudden they start speaking about these expectations in their lives. 9 times out of 10 it is amongst those who have been on their journey of awakening, who are involved in higher learning, expanding themselves, wanting to do breath work, wanting to do meditation, wanting to do many different things to achieve that, let's just use the word, that higher access to ascension. Yes? And what happens is they take on others' perceptions of what should or should not be a good spiritual being. This puts a spiritual pressure or a stress upon the person's energy, spiritual soul, if you want to call it. And the best way I can describe it is, let us look at two sets of people. You have those who have been in a religious organization for majority of the years, and they suddenly start to experience lack of confidence. They question everything about what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing, who they are, etc., etc. And this is because in the religious organizations, they will have gone through the various steps because they have these outlines of what they are to achieve in their personal growth, in their personal well-being, their spiritual well-being of connecting to God, connecting to Allah, connecting to the great cosmic mind, etc., depending on what belief you're in. Mm-hmm. Yes? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they sometimes get to this place and they go, I haven't done this. I haven't achieved this. And they start to require counseling because all of a sudden, things are just not matching in their lives and they begin to get depressed. They begin to get into a mindset of, there's something wrong with me.
Can I ask a question? Could you give a more definitive example, say, for example, was, we've got a fair idea who our audience might be. Give us an example that may, one our audience members may, resonate with around this.
All right, so let's bring that scenario into the New Age movement, into the spiritual awakened community. Yes?
Light worker community.
Light worker community.
Whatever that might be, yeah.
Yes, the workers of light. All right, so let us just take the last, let's go back to 2019. Now, let's go back to 2018, even 2017. There was a certain, 2017 and 2018, there was a certain je ne sais quoi, a certain ease, frivolity in many of the people, many of the individuals, many of the souls living on the earth at this time. They felt that they could achieve anything they wanted to. There was there were thousands going through self-help classes. They were gaining insights on themselves. They were becoming enlightened, etc., etc. Then 2019 happened, and things started to get a little scary. In 2020 fully arrived, and everybody was experiencing disassociation. They were told they had to remain behind locked doors, so to speak. Remain inside, do not communicate, do not touch, do not. Now, all of this brought on very naturally the symptoms within the physical realm of stress, of things that were going on, that they felt out of control. They could not control what was happening in their environment, so they then began to compensate in other areas. And it could be eating, it could be binge TV, it could be any sort of thing, yes? Mm-hmm. Maybe some people started smoking during that time. Maybe some people started drinking. Maybe some people gave it all up. Everybody dealt with it in a slightly different way, yes? But very few tapped into the awareness that spiritually they were tapping into. Sorry, I'm just intrigued in the.
He's got a bone.
The dog has a bone.
The dog.
And so if you hear anything in the background, there's
it's one of the dogs.
One of the puppies, yes. So spiritually speaking, what nobody truly considered at the time was there was a spiritual stress being placed among the individuals of this realm.
On purpose.
On purpose. And that stress was to break, spiritually speaking, break the connection between the heart and the individual, and the heart and the creator. Now, this worked in some ways. There were many light workers who, due to the pressures that were being spoken over them, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this. They stepped out of the spiritual realm and they stepped into the physical realm of conceptualization. Oh, I have to do this because, oh, I have to do this, I have to take this, I have to do that, I have to receive this, I have to give that, blah, 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 blah. Yes?
But not just that, it's all, there was also maybe
I haven't finished, but carry on.
you sure? I thought that I'm doing it for the good of all.
Mm-hmm.
That type of
Yes,
mentality.
absolutely.
Okay.
I will receive the poison in my body and I will clear it from my body and I will teach other people to do. And those people are still clearing the poison. They're still having to have the side effects of that. But what I'm trying to say is the spiritual level or the spiritual layer of stress that came at that time was not recognized and has not been recognized until probably in the last 12 to 15 months.
Okay.
All right. Because if you look at it, all of a sudden, people have been having meltdowns. And they've put it down to emotional trauma, emotional PTSD, etc., of events that have occurred over this intense, controlled psyop over the last 4 years, 5 years.
Can I make a comment or a question? It's anybody, it's everybody. It doesn't matter if one succumbed to the so-called
It is a flame transmutation.
or not. It's just something that's there. It's affected many.
Absolutely. Those who are empaths and intuitively connected will probably have felt it a lot sooner. But it is this is why earlier on I referred to it as like a psychic blanket. It was just placed on, and eventually, just like a blanket is placed on a sleeping individual, they're not conscious of it to begin with. But then as they're sleeping, as they toss, as they turn, as they cuddle into that blanket, it wraps itself around. And sometimes, depending on how the person sleeps or moves in their sleep state, it can become an imprisonment or it can become a cover.
So how does it manifest in real terms in a sleep state? What are we looking at? And I'm sure I've experienced some of that, but just...
Well, I was using the sleep state just as an example of a blanket being laid over somebody. But if we look at the spiritual aspect, all right, what begins to happen is at first it's just an irritation. It's just something that's there, and you brush it off, you breathe, you in some cases there will be those that will resist the feeling, resist the sensations, because it doesn't vibrationally fit. So they will do everything that they've been taught to do instead of addressing the issue as what it should be, which is, this is an external stress that's been placed upon me. Is it mine? Is this something that I have invited into my life? And as I've shown you, dealing it like an aspect or something like that. But remember, with this particular one, we can't actually call it an aspect because it was never yours to begin with. It was a implied and a imposed feeling, emotion, sensation that eventually you took on as your own. Because there was no other conceptualization, no other way of comprehending it.
So what are the symptoms? How's it manifested?
What I see in many of the souls on this earth, and again, this is whether you are a light worker, a new ager, a Christian, a Muslim, a Scientologist, I don't care, atheist.
Or none or neither.
Or nothing, just the average Joe on the road.
Or just your spiritual...
It matters not who or what you are, what label you wear. This is what I'm trying to indicate. It starts off with like a sense of like, how can we put it? Like you're tired. You're energetically, spiritually tired. It hasn't yet attached to your physical. So you have energy, you have the wherewithal to do your day, you actually want to do, because you want to be active, you want to distract yourself, so you're going out, but there's this unexplained I
know exactly what you're talking about. It can linger for days on end,
and then it disappears.
Yeah.
And then it would disappear because you'd breathe, you'd do what it is that you needed to do to clear your energy, to clear your mindset. You would do what was necessary. But then it would come back, and this time that would become and it would be a little bit more, should we use the word, difficult to shift through. In this time, in this beginning stages, those who were prone to natural depression, and by this I mean you go through, every living soul will go through a time period where they become depressed because of circumstances and situations where pressures of life just get a little bit too much, but they are not a depressive by nature. It's not a manic depressive. It's not something that is chemically imbalanced within them. It's just an emotion. And they clear this, they get over it, they move forward, and they jump to the next level of their experience. However, what was happening to some, even in this, with this ability, this stress, this spiritual blanket was weaving its way into society, and we suddenly find that more and more souls did not want to have, even though they now had, so should we say, permission to interact in family groups and to bubbles and to expanding further than 15 or 10 souls, and you could now go to 30 to 100 souls, etc., etc. And then as time moved on, even further out and become normal.
So you're talking about when the restrictions were on planetary wide.
Yes, and then when they were lifted, those souls, many of them, even those who you would term in a normal situation were your average Joe of the life of the party, yes? Those who would naturally just move on and move over things, just be able to clear things in their lives, just etc., etc. These ones, you would certainly find, what we found in the energy was these ones became what we would call the first wounded in the psychic and in the spiritual way of this attack.
As in they've lost their joy.
Lost their joy in life, lost their ability to get up and go, no purpose left in their lives anymore. And it is a sensory of, in some ways, of PTSD, because they were in a spiritual war, but they were not told that they had been drafted. They were not told that they were in a battle. They just went, they literally woke up one day and were in a war of the emotion, of the physical, of the mental, of the spiritual. It was a war against them that had been declared, and they were not aware. However, there were those who are, shall we say, completely asleep and completely blinded to what was going on. Even they had a spiritual stress level that was going on. And these were probably, what we did note, these ones would be the ones that would react angrily to everything. Everything became a problem. If you were happy, or if they came across somebody that was happy, that had managed to break through their mindset, accept what was going on for the pro-tem, knowing that tomorrow would be a different day, tomorrow could be better. And so on that day, they were happy. Those who were in the, what I would call the blinded state, accepting all of the paraphernalia that went on with the social media and the subliminal messaging that was going on, grew to dislike those happy people more so than what they normally would have done. And this is the spiritual weight of this stress. It affected people in very different ways. But bottom line is, today what we have is a society of people with trauma in their souls, trauma in their bodies, trauma in their minds, in their spiritual bodies. And bless their hearts, there have been groups that have sprung up, even more so. They've always been there to a degree, yes. There are people with breath work, leading people into DMT release naturally through breath, the fire breath, yoga breath, doing all of these things, soma breaths, you see, all of these things have been available in the past. But now what's happened is a few bright sparks have gone, hang on, I can take this breath and I can put sound and vibration to it. I can do subliminal messaging. I can do audible messaging. And it's a positive thing. I'm not knocking this. Hear me out here. I'm not knocking this. And they have gone and they have found a niche. Just like Louise has done meditations and with myself to help people get to a certain place in their physiology that takes them out of the physical and into the energetic to release at a not only a cellular level, but at a spiritual level.
Yep.
But however, what I would say to those who are working with the somic IQ, the breath work that takes people into the trauma of the body, you must be careful that you do not open them to more trauma. Because if you do not heal the spiritual, then this allows for more to be deposited into the empty spaces of physical.
When you say open up to more trauma, how does that manifest within breath work?
Okay, so let us go back to using aspect integration as an example.
Yep.
All right. So in aspect integration, I've taught you to take the person into a breath to get them relaxed. Yes. Mm-hmm. We get them to identify within their physical body the aspects that are presenting to be dealt with.
Yes.
Yes. We ask them to name them. Now, it could be anger, jealousy, fear. It could be entitlement. It could be whatever. Right? Mm-hmm. But we get them to present it. It stands in front of them. They begin to communicate to this aspect. Mm-hmm. They go through the process. And what have I taught you once they've released that blockage, that aspect, that part of them that has held them back, decreased their output and input to themselves, who held them in a death grip, preventing their expansion, perhaps blinding them to all sorts of different possibilities.
Well, you have to do the opposite. You have to then bring in the positive aspect, that which you really want. So the opposite to anger might be self-love or
peace, whatever. Yes. So
and to bring that in and to build that up within one's own energy and one's synaptics.
So this is a very, very important thing. And when I have taken people through the breath that I do with the meditation, I take them into a place where they are connected in many of the bodies, not just the physical body, not just the cellular. It's the mental, it's the emotional, it's the physical, it's highly, highly, highly important is the spiritual, that ethereal layer that we will live in. Yes? Because remember, the physical body, as I like to call it, is the meat suit. It's your spacesuit for traveling around in this realm. It's what you experience. The various things. It's you pick up a pen and you go, oh, that's got a sharp edge there. I can lift that off. I can click it on. It makes a sound. I can hear that. The physical body or the meat suit that you are in, this is what
we experience. The central nervous system.
Exactly.
Sensories.
Yes. Yeah. It's what translates the events that you're interacting with, so that the spirit within can assimilate. Can compute that down, if I can use this terminology.
Yeah.
All right. However, when you go into healing, it's not just something that you get people to release. You must realize that they can release it. But if it's, and I align some of the work that's been done through breath work to back in the 80s, where they did the primal scream, the primal roar, where people would come together and they would go into a meditation, or they would be led into a guided meditation. We would get them to a peak point of expressing what was locked up inside of them. And they would have plastic hammers, they would have punching things, they would have pillows that they could throw around and scream. They would be able to throw themselves on the floor and scream and rant and rave and release from that primal way what was locked up inside of them. What I'm seeing in some of these ways is this breath work that's been done is tapping into that same primal energy of release. Now, Tobias took a group of you through the vortices.
Yep.
And many of you, when you went through the what he called the foundation vortice, what other people know is the root chakra, yes? And remembering that vortice and chakra come from the same root word, so they mean exactly the same, so you can use it intermittently and exchange these things around. So when you go into this, into the breath that he led you, and there was just the breath and the guidance, but he was getting you to tap into your physical body, your energy body, your mental, because you were listening to the guidance, and the spiritual body was doing the work, because all of a sudden it was given the space to realize that what was happening in the physical cellular body, it had stored all of this energy and it needed to be released. So the spirit was able to come in, your spirit. When I talk about the spirit, I'm talking about your soul, your eternal part that exists within each and every one of you. It would be able to come in with let's just call it the technical thing of the broom and sweep clean. But in doing that, it dislodged old trauma. And in the acknowledgement of the old trauma, one was able to go in, especially with Tobias's teaching, and see how the body was reacting at a physical level. There would be pain, there could be illnesses, it could be arthritises, there could be skeletal problems, physical problems, mental problems, but they're all locked into the physical body somehow. And these are the levels of stress. So the spiritual stress, if it is not dealt with at a spiritual level of recognizing I'm in stress, how do you recognize it? Lethargy, tiredness. You become very distracted very quickly. You can't focus in a breath work unless you have something to listen to or to follow. Now, that's not always a bad thing, but you should be able to sit in silence for at least 5 minutes and just breathe without the mind taking you on a journey to wherever. You should be able to get the mind under control. Spiritual stress is when everything becomes too much, spiritually speaking. And so you distract to the physical realm. Then you become very stressed in the physical realm because you cannot cope with what you're distracting yourself with. So it becomes internalized and it goes into the cellular body. The cellular body can no longer then, after a while, cannot carry that. So your body begins to break down. Then emotionally, you get kicked into the emotional stress because now you're carrying spiritual stress, physical stress, mental stress, everything's starting to break down, and emotionally you feel useless. You feel you cannot achieve anything. Mm-hmm. You're disconnected emotionally from other people at a heart level because you feel that you cannot go to them and say, I need help, because you may have always been that person that has always helped others. It could be that person that has instinctively and always needed help. And now you feel, I can't keep going back and asking for more help. Mm. And so what happens is everything gets compounded. It starts with the spiritual stress. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know that I've experienced various stages of that over the past few years. I certainly have. And somehow I think I've managed to break through something. But I know that this will resonate with a lot of people out there. And I just want to say there should be no shame or guilt, because this is all part of it with the spiritual stress. And then it starts manifesting in the physicality, the mental, the emotional mind. The shame, the guilt, I should be doing better, what's wrong with me, some of the things that Cifehtr suggested, I'm no good, I'm not living up to my true lifetime, who I truly am, why can't I get it together and stuff like that, and to just let those thoughts and feelings wash over you and go, and realise that it's not who you are. Those thoughts and feelings are not who you are. There's something bigger at play here, and there should be no shame or guilt. You should always reach out to people that you trust and love, and have a conversation at least, and talk to people that are on the same page around these types of topics. It's really important. And I know when we've done our Facebook Lives, we've had a lot of people that have admitted they've been under stress, and I think a lot of this has been spiritual stress over the last few years. So it's touched all of us in different ways.
Absolutely, but there is something else that I want to also sort of touch on, and it's not just based on the amount of stress that's come over the last 5 or so years, 6 years. It is, at times, people will sit and they will find entertainment on the YouTube, they will find entertainment on the TV, etc., etc. And by entertainment, I'm not talking about movies, I'm not talking about the quick fix sensations, but they will find what they believe are good teachers, spiritual teachers, or teachers that have knowledge who reject every possible connection to spirituality as what is presented today. But they have a spiritual connection, and they know who they are in the spirit realm, yes, in that sort of way of being, and they have knowledge that has come through their own personal study, and they start sharing it with people. And what can happen is sometimes when you are in a place where you are unsure about certain things with yourself, you are going through a shift, and you hear somebody go, oh yes, you resonate with something, and you start listening, and then you start listening to more and more podcasts of this particular person or people like this. You start to then come under and this is another way that spiritual stress works. It's also a very devious way of how the enemy of your soul will work against you when it's trying to keep you in a place of subservient coercion. Yes? So what happens is you find somebody that helps break your mindset, helps to break you out of the self-imposed stress prison that you're putting yourself in. But then all of a sudden you start listening more and more to the information, and you start your mind, instead of going, oh wow, this is great, I'm breaking free, yes, I can see this, and your body starts to heal. All of a sudden, with the stress level not being dealt with correctly, what happens is there are some out there that go, oh, I have to relook at the way I was brought up because I was brought up in a religion, or I was brought up in a belief system. I have to relook at how I do think about things because of this. And oh my goodness, I'm living in a dream within a dream. Oh, I'm living in a computer program. All based on how a individual or a group of individuals will put forward their personal perception, their personal way of comprehending what is going around in their life and how they talk about it. And when you get some beautiful souls, beautiful individuals who do not have a true grounding of who they are, a true foundation of where they stand in life, they will snatch at other people's beliefs or other people's concepts and try to make it their own. But that never works for a long period of time. It can work for a while, and then the cracks start and you fall through, because it's not your belief. It's not your foundation. You have listened to something else. It resonates for a while. It makes sense. But instead of doing the work of actually studying, of going in and picking it apart, finding the flaws, not finding the flaws, maybe getting in a bit of a discussion with other people and solidifying why you believe that this is a good foundation to stand on. When you don't do that, what happens is you allow that stress in the spiritual realm to then start to filter down, and it becomes, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you have to give up. You're brought up this way, and now you have to actually release that. You're not good enough anymore. That belief system, you know, how could you believe that was that, you know? And all of these things of self-doubt come back in because you've moved from, I can come out of this particular realm, and you move to the next realm because you're growing, which is always a good thing. But unless you have a foundation to stand on, you're going to fall through the cracks. And so I would advise you very, very strongly that if you do find teachers out there, fellow souls out there that have a concept, have a way of looking at life that makes perfect sense, but at the moment of your connection, it seems to butt heads with certain of your core belief systems, don't just jump straight in and go, oh yes, I must give everything up, because what you're doing then is you are removing a foundation that has held you up for your entire life. And when you do that, there's one of two things that can happen. One, you enter into a express depression stage, and you literally go back down to the bottom, and you have to rebuild your way back up. And I've worked with people at this stage, and it is for them quite difficult. It's painful because it's literally stripping away layer by layer, sinew by sinew. It's rebuilding. It's because what they've done is they have literally removed everything that they've stood on. And sometimes what comes out of that is the most beautiful diamond. It's the most beautiful nugget of gold. And that person, that individual has become a very strong and very centered-minded being. But not everybody can achieve that. There are some that are still wounded, and we're still working to get them to a level of just accepting that each day can be different. The second, and the one I advise, was when you meet people like this, even Heather and Louise, and myself, and the other Ascended Masters that work through it with us, is when you meet people that have a different concept to what you're used to, but it makes sense. Don't wholeheartedly chuck everything out and accept what these people say as gospel, because all you're doing is changing one belief system for another belief system, and it's not your belief system. And I've always said this: what is your truth? What is your truth? Your truth must come from the very center of who you are, the very core being. You could be somebody who has been let's just use this, a Christian for 60 years. And you meet somebody who shatters that belief system very logically, but not in a way of harm, very systematic, going, this is how I read it, this is how, and sits with you and shows you why they cannot believe what you believe. And you suddenly realize they're telling the truth. You see the misconceptions, you see the infiltrations, you see the subliminal messages, you see all of the lies that have come through from the very, very beginning. But because of your age, because of the years that you've gone through your belief system, my advice to you is not to jump off that foundation. My advice to you would be to sit and reread, relearn the concepts of what faith truly is. Faith is not giving yourself away to something. Faith is building in here what is true. Faith is knowing that there is, and I'm just going to say this, there are multiple layers of this existence. But above the layers, there is what we would call the source code, the true divine, the original being that has interjected life into the multiple layers. However, these multiple layers have become infiltrated, have become diseased, if I can use this word, and so have mutated to claim that they themselves are God. They themselves are a creative force. Now, in some ways, they are telling you the truth. And you see, this is where the stress of the spirit comes in. Because how can it be true if it's a lie? How can the lie be the truth? And it's very simply this: a lie cannot be truth. But if it emulates, if it copies a truth and alters the frequency ever so slightly over time, over a long period of time, eventually what will happen is people, when it first starts happening, they will know this is wrong. There's something wrong here, and they will find out what's wrong, and they will go back to the truth. But given over a period of time where the scale starts to come down, and it's not a deep incline, it is an incline that drops a few degrees over many, 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 many years, to the point where we are today, shall we say, where we go, well, what's religion? What's faith? What's God? What's this? What's that? And everybody questions it. And that's because the true essence of creation, the true essence of the divine creator, has been hidden, has been lied about. Now, does this affect me as an ascended master? No, because I know I can see. But you'd give that information to somebody who is so committed in their faith, so committed that they truly believe that everything they do, everything they live for, is for this being, this deity that they serve. In some belief systems, they believe that they need to be burnt to ascend. And some, there is rules and regulations. They have to live by this way. Now, this has come about. If you go back and you can find a true history, you'll find that this never existed 200 years ago. But your history books of today will tell you that it did. 400 years ago, it was a completely different way of living. 500 years ago, it was, again, a freer world. But what's happened over time, you've had what I would call these events that have shifted and changed. They have brought in stress fractures into the cosmos that you exist in. They have brought in stress factors into the realm you live in, which has, shall we say, allowed an infiltration of a spiritual stress into your life. But you were not there at its inception, but you are here at its end result. And so this is why, for many of you, you are dealing with untold traumas of your life. And you have teachers out there that will say this is past life trauma, it's PTSD of what's happened over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years. It is this, and in many ways it's true. This is a truth. But the bigger truth is that the energy has been shifting and changing over many hundreds of years to bring you to this point where they are trying to break your spiritual connection, your physical connection, your mental connection, your health connection, all of the different energy bodies that you exist within, to separate you in, shall we say, from a spiritual being to a dumbed down avatar. Let me just call it. Or what is the favorite terminology of today with the computer? A non-character player, yes?
Non-player
character who just exists within the game to ensure that there are things are going around so that you, when you're interacting with different things as a player, don't feel weird that there's nobody else in the room, that when you go to the bank and you're drawing money out, you're not drawing your money out of fresh air. There is a teller, there is an ATM machine, there is something there that you're interacting with as the player, because if there wasn't, then the player would go, what's going on? You see, I've just given you something to consider that could or could not be a key to your releasing the spiritual stress. Because spiritual stress does not have to be a serious thing. Now, there are meditations that I'm working on. I've already done the violet flame, which many people have found it to be beneficial. I'm talking recently, not from ones in the past. And I would encourage people to use that to start off with. But I will be presenting more in the future, because I believe this is a very important thing, that people deal with the traumas that are blocked in their cellular, deal with the trauma that's blocked in the mental, deal with the traumas that are blocked in their emotion, but more importantly, deal with the spiritual trauma that has been there for generations, for lifetimes. Because if we can deal with that, everything else. In fact, if we deal with that first, then it will have a knock-on effect with everything.
Lifetimes, spiritual stress and trauma from lifetimes.
Yes.
So you're saying in each incarnation or each presentation here in this realm, there is more dumbing down of the spirituality.
Oh, yes. Yes,
okay.
yes.
What about, does this occur in other realms? Or is this specific to this?
At the moment, well, let me just say that it is more specific here.
So I don't want to go too off top, because I know we could really branch out from here, but yeah.
There are other dimensions where this thing has been duplicated, if I can call it that way. But if we can go back to many of the resets, so the reasons why your world, your realm has these resets is because the divine creator is trying to, how do I put it? It's like, you know, when you shudder, you're trying to get rid of something in your energy, excess static electricity, excess emotion. Why do you yawn? You yawn because the body either needs to do a nerve reset, or it needs to, power of suggestion.
That's right.
Or the vagus system needs to be, vagus nerve needs to be reset. The body needs to just let go of something. So it is that the cosmos, so it is that the divine creator, the original waters of source, are trying to shift off the things that have overlaid it. Yes? So these resets over many different things are divinely placed to break.
Not all resets, though. Some of them are man-made, aren't they? Some of them are created by the elect,
some of them are, yes. But I would say the biggest and the most, let me put it this way. There are some resets that are, we will call it minor and medium, repetitive ones. These are in some ways mostly done in a healing nature, but there are some of these that are being mimicked by the elite. So your smaller ones, like your major earthquakes, your tornadoes, where disaster comes to clear out humanity, yes, to clear out large quantities of people. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful or hurt people when I speak about this, but there is a plan to ensure the diminishment of the souls upon this earth.
I think there's a few of us aware of that at the moment.
Yeah. All right, so as I was mentioning, we're here in this time where so much has happened, and we have the breath. We have a deeper connection to ourselves, and it will help us to access our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, where we can actually begin to look at what has been infiltrated down through the thing. So say with all of these resets that you were talking about, or some of them elite, some of them not, yes? So I'm going to say that there are what I would call earth-changing, terraformer-changing resets. And these are the major ones, yes? Now, some people will say, oh, this is the elites. The elites are destroying the world because they want to rebuild it in their own image. However, I would say to this that they are partly right.
Mm-hmm.
Because the original blueprint of this realm was created by a very powerful being. Very powerful. Some people mistakenly say this is God, etc., etc., etc. And I say mistakenly because there is a God of this world. Small g. That one, yes.
That one that we choose to.
And what's happened is it's been inverted to make people believe that it is the supreme being, the supreme coding. All right, give it the name that feels right for yourself. I've heard terminologies of the great oversoul. I've heard terminologies of the waters of source. I've heard the light.
Hang on, you're talking about the
true divine creator.
Not the one with the little g.
This is what the little g is convincing the souls of this earth
trying to mimic.
That it is, yes.
Trying to mimic.
It's trying to mimic, yes.
The great creator.
And this is why it uses dark magic, it uses manipulation to entrap the minds, to bring them into coercion, to bring them into a place of brokenness so that it can control them. And then eventually what it realizes is it can't actually control out of fear, so it creates all of these different pockets where, yes, there is fear, but on the opposite strata of that, or the opposite end, it has created the worshipful ways of being, okay? Because people like to be able to feel free to choose what they want, yes? And they want to be able to worship a being of love and of acceptance and whatnot. And the question is like, there are many there that are in these, and they have been in there for years and years and years, and they've been praying to this God for healing, for abundance, for happy families, for all of these things, to find peace on earth. Have they found it?
Can't speak to anybody else.
Well, I know many that are still seeking, and yet every day they get up and they this 100% give 100% of their lives to this energy. However, then we come out of that and we find people who have walked away from that, and they have found what they believe is the source code to the true divine creator, and their lives have literally turned around. And so what do we see? We see that, again, the spiritual content of this with the stress levels, there is a shifting of the energy there. So what does this have to do with the big resets I was talking about? Well, there are times where the world will go through a terraformer event that is allowed by the great divine, the true divine. It allows the little g, the little creator that thinks it's a creator, to do what it needs to do. But have you noticed that that these events only affect a third or plus?
Why is it allowed? That's the question I can hear ringing across the...
Because there is, just like I was saying before, it's trying to, the blueprint, the original blueprint is trying to break free. All right? So how do you break free from something that has bound you? You send electric shocks, you jerk it, you try to break something. Now, you would say to me, and logically I can see this, if I'm bigger than you, and if I'm stronger than you, and if I'm more expansive than you, and I've got more control and more power than you, why don't I just come in and squash you and remove you from the thing and just let everybody free?
Why does it what is the...
I'm getting there.
Okay. Getting there.
If I'm the supreme God, or the supreme being, and you are the little g, okay? You are the one that is controlling all of these things. You have all of these elites in your pocket, and they worship you, and they give you their lifeblood, their energy, you know, all the rest of it to sustain you, all right? Because that's what you need. So why don't I come in and completely annihilate you?
Soul lesson?
Well, the soul lesson, but it's also the fact that this place does truly belong to you.
So why don't you come in?
Because this place belongs to the little G, to a degree.
Oh, to me, the little G.
Yes.
I'm not really the little G, I'm just acting a part here.
And the reason I say that is because the manipulation that has been placed over the original is done in such a way that if it was to be ripped away, it would cause more damage to those souls that have incarnated time and time again here in the loop, because it has to come to a place where they realize that this connection that they keep having is incorrect, and that they have to shift so that they reconnect into the true dimension.
Well, that's back to my soul journey or my soul choice. It's an evolutionary process.
And so where these events happen over time that changes, Black Death, earthquakes, the floods, the mud floods, all of these different events over time. The freezings, yes. All of these have happened to help reset the blueprint, so that the true blueprint can literally force its way through what is dormant, which then allows those who survive, and I use this word survive because yes, there is death during these times, yes, that when they come through and they have to reinvent themselves, they have knowledge, they know exactly what's been going on, but everything that was there before is
gone.
It's not so much gone, but it's unable to be used. So it's like your archaeologists and all the rest of it have found these great things from the past, cogs from the ocean that nobody knows, but it looks like a computer, the inside of a computer. What are the pyramids for? Who built these great structures around the world? Why is everything in a certain observational planetary? Look at the sphinxes. You have a sphinx here and you have a sphinx here, etc., etc., etc.
So you're saying the resets are to make it very obvious that there's something going on.
In many ways, yes, because what happens is people have to reinvent, they have to relearn who they are. And each time this has happened, and sometimes in some resets it's been a huge breakthrough and there has been a shift away from let's just call it the physical realm and more into the spiritual realm, where the divine has had more influence into the souls of the people of this realm. And then there's been other resets where it has been dense, very, very dense, where the souls of this earth have had to work harder to find that connection. And this happens to be where you are in now, from early 1900s to now. This has been one of the densest resets you've experienced.
Wow, that's cheerful, isn't it? But yeah, thank you for that. So the question now is,
what do we do about it?
Well, but also can I just backtrack a little bit? The God with the little G, it's not me anymore, by the way, I'm out of that role, I don't like playing that role. It's their, his, her, its world, right?
Yes.
Has it always been like that?
No.
When did it change and why? Or is that another conversation?
That's another conversation, because that could go for quite a while.
Okay, we'll get into that into the next segment, maybe, or into another segment. I'd love to cover that with you, because I know there's lots of conversation around that, because my inner spiritual sense says it hasn't always been like this at all, and something happened. And I think part of that's also in Lou's Lyran books. The Lyran books.
So it has been covered a bit, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so right now, solution.
So solution, let's go back to what I was talking about with the trauma in the bodies, the stress levels that build up, and the fact that there are many groups out there, there are many people, but there are a few groups that have placed themselves front and forward for breath work, to encourage people to come into breathwork sessions. Some of them do them in dark rooms with just sound and no visual. You have either masks on your eye masks, or it's in a very, very black room. And this is to help you disassociate from your surroundings so that you can focus your energy on what needs to be done. Now, that's not a bad thing. It actually can benefit you. But all of this is most of this is dealing with what they will call the hidden trauma, the physical trauma, the mental trauma, the emotional trauma that the souls have gone through. And I am not knocking that. It needs to be done. People need to be able to recognize and release. However, what I am suggesting is that there needs to be spiritual release as well. And this is what I am creating at the moment. I am creating these meditations that will use binaural. It will use certain technology that is used today, yes, sound, etc., because it helps the brain, because of the overstimulation in this world at the moment where the brain needs to be occupied. What we're going to try and do is we're trying to get the mind from its busy state and bring it to a place of calmness. So then when we step into we walk away, and this is just basically very much in a nutshell, we will walk away from a certain level of connection in this meditation and this breath work, and we will drop into something else. So I'm not going to obviously give too much away here.
Well, I've actually done a little bit of the breath work that's been suggested by yourself, to myself and Louise, and I found it, I'm going to say, life-changing very quickly. Just some of the movement that I had. I was really surprised because I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I love the breath. I utilise breath in different ways, but I haven't, participated in that particular way before, and I found it really bloody amazing.
You see, what I'm also going to be doing is I'm going to be using my guidance for people to go into certain timelines, to go into certain places where they will be able to connect. And you see, I would not advise just anybody to do this way of working with another soul's energy, because if you're not 100% sure where you're going with this, you can
muck things up.
Do a little bit.
So. I can imagine. I remember many years ago, just briefly, I got myself into a situation where I got myself out of this timeline into something else, and I had a very pointy-finger spiritual teacher over me going, "What have you done to yourself?"
It wasn't me.
That was a long time before I met you and Lou. So yeah, what have you done to yourself? I was experimenting, and you can actually do some hideous things to your energy and end up in other timelines if you're not very careful.
So this is where people
realize, yeah.
Well, also again, it's when people start opening up without the proper guidance, without the proper comprehension, they can end up splitting their energy. Splitting their minds.
And it's very, very uncomfortable.
It is. And if they don't know how to bring themselves back, that split, it will naturally heal, but it will be very loose and it will open up. And this is where many people suffer from what you would term multiple personalities, split personalities, possession, whatever name you wish to give it.
You're never really functioning in this world.
No, you're not, because you're never truly here. So we need to do this truly properly, with very much with respect, with honor, a lot of integrity, with permission, and that's just on my behalf. For those that are going to be coming in and joining me, they need to work with their own integrity.
Are you going to do this online?
I will do recordings for people, and I believe it is something that we can do online eventually, but I also believe it should be done in person as well.
So the other suggestion is that we run in-house personal retreats, utilising this, and keep the numbers very small.
Yes, well, you can have, and I see this being done by many people, especially when they have multiple practitioners. They have 50 to 100 people at a time in groups, all lying down, being guided through the same thing. And my main concern to something like this is it's a system. You see, it's a beautiful system to begin with. It works, but when it is a repetitive loop, okay, and if somebody experiences something in that and they do have a release and they're told, oh, that's great, that's fantastic, the practitioner, like there's certain things as you're breathing, if you rub the sternum, the sternum is a great place for releasing locked up emotions. Same with the lower part of the rib cage. There's certain parts, just in there, this one needs to work on some things.
So you're also suggesting that if you're doing it en masse, then that those people are not getting the individual, because there's going to be some people that are going to be presenting very differently. We're very unique and individual.
You see, some people, and this is what most are expecting, is the primal release. Screaming and crying and going on, and the body twitching like this, and this is why, unfortunately, some of the breath work has been labeled demonic, because the church believes that's demon possession or being etc. etc. However, the body, when it is in trauma, will react in a certain way. All right, so my thing is, when I do this, I will work with people. I will work with probably 5 at the most. The reason for that is I want to be able to, 1, create a safe space for them. 2, I want to be able to monitor their own individual, because you will get the one that will shout, scream, rant, and rave. And then there'll be the other one over there that will go into what I call spiritual shock, where they will literally lock up. And they may cry, the water may come out of their eyes very, very silently, and they may tremor like this. That's the one I want. Why? Because that's the one that is dealing at such a deep spiritual level that they are beyond the physical. Yeah. But when they start to rise up, not only just rise up, but also rise down, drop down. So they're going to be dropping down spiritually, but they're going to be rising up metaphorically in their bodies, yes? And when those two meet, that is then when you may have a interaction, you see. The one over here, there is nothing wrong with what's going on here. They are having interaction with themselves. They are releasing at a trauma level, and they are letting go what they need to let go. Yep. They may not be ready to drop down to the spiritual, or drop into the spiritual trauma release.
But I hear what you're saying. So you know what you're looking for.
And you see, this is why I would work with you and I would work with Louise, so that, for argument's sake, I might say, you go deal with that one. You go put your hand on your hand on their chest, on the sternum, just touch it, release it. If they're sitting up, then you want to go into the back areas. You want to place your on the spine, so that they know that there's, or it just may be that they sort of like sit up. And so what do? And they're shaking. So there's certain ways of wrapping your body around it, so it gives what I call a body glove hug, which is what they may need to just break through. There are all these certain things that are needed, you see. And this is why you start with a few people. And then you move forward like that. Okay. So, and again, I am not saying that there is anything wrong with the people that have got the practitioners that do 50, 20, 50, whatever going on into the bigger groups. But I feel that it is, if you are truly going to connect to this level, there needs to be a spiritual quotient of understanding the spiritual stress that an individual is going through.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just see how different everybody is, and everyone comes in with a different blueprint, a different set of traumas, some less than others, and some much more hidden too. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, well, thank you.
no, it is always good to have a chat with you.
Are we going to wind it up there?
I think we should wind it up there. And perhaps if I may take this moment to suggest that people may want to purchase my book.
Oh, The Mystery Teachings of Self-Mastery, a fucking good read, I've called it. That's my tagline with it. And whether you like swearing or not, too bad. It's a fucking good read. And I'll put the link in here. It's an amazing book. And I'll put the Violet Flame meditation link in here as well. And for those of you, that goes hand in hand with the teaching, by the way, with the book. And we'll keep you posted with our breath work, if I can call it that.
It's breath work. It's breath healing. So yes.
Courses coming up and all of that. Well, I'm very excited to be presenting that with you. It's going to be great. Really excited. This is it. I feel like when you were talking about it, I'm going, oh, I'm so ready for this. This is so important at the moment, so I'm excited. So I hope you're all well out there. And if you're not, that's okay too. Take a big breath and we'll see you soon. Bye.